Hello, welcome to another episode of Nerds at Night, episode number 3. Regular listeners will know that nonLethal's away because of reasons, and as a result, we've got our first ever guest nerd, Scuzzy. Welcome to the show, Scuzz.
Hey, g'day, Tolly. Thanks for the invite.
That's alright. Just before we launch into our talking points today, I think we should have our listeners get to know you a bit. I'm going to start you off with some of the questions that nonLethal and I discussed last week. And since we've got another fairly gaming-heavy episode with a bit of tech touch tucked in the side there, I think we'll ask you, how long have you been gaming for, and what are your favourite platforms?
Okay, so I've been gaming for the better part of over 20 years, I guess. So you can roughly guess how old I am. Favourite platforms, PC, it's where I started. I've got
PC Master Race.
Yeah, so I've also got an Xbox 360. I haven't got an Xbox One yet, so I mainly use the Xbox for sort of platformer style social games or to gather around mates around the TV to have a bit of fun, but spend most of my time gaming on the PC. But more recently, to do with work, I spend a lot of time on planes and interstate. I've invested in a PlayStation Vita, so I spend a bit of time sort of playing games on that when I'm interstate.
Oh, that's fair. I think you and I are probably one of the only two people in the world that actually bought a PlayStation Vita and can find one of the 3 good games on it worth playing.
It's look, I quite like it, but having said that, though, I sort of bought it 2 years into the platform's life. I guess the Vita in the early days, there wasn't a lot of titles for it, whereas now I can sort of pick and choose what are the better ones. Like, for instance, they've just released God of War 1 and 2 on the Vita, and I've been playing that recently. That's been quite good.
Yeah, there's definitely some gems on there as well. It must be nice for you to get into some of the Sony franchises, having the Xbox tucked away in the living room.
Yeah, well, then when I saw God of War the other day, I thought that's definitely a purchase, given the fact that it's not an option to play on the 360 or PC. So that was good to get hold of and get stuck into.
Yeah, definitely. We'll ask you one more quick question before we launch into our talking points for tonight. Do you have any fanboyisms?
The obvious one, which you know about, being a leading question, is I'm a bit of a Razer fanboy, so I've got pretty much Razer everything other than an actual laptop. So that, and I've been a pretty hardcore Nvidia fan for a long time as well. We're probably the two.
Right, I'm going to go back to Razer because I know you're a damn hardcore Razer fanboy. Can you give me a quick list of what Razer gear you would have with your PC setup at the moment?
Alright, so stuff that I've currently got connected. I've got a Razer Tiamat 7.1 headset. I've got a Razer Orb Weaver gamepad. I've got a Razer Deathstalker Ultimate keyboard, a Razer Boros wireless and wide combo mouse, and I've got one of their ginormous Goliathus control mouse mats, one of the ones that's about a metre wide.
Good lord, man.
Yeah. So
in the interest of full disclosure, I have a Razer Megalodon, a Black Widow keyboard, Ultimate, I think.
Yep.
And I can't remember the name of the mouse. I won it at a LAN gaming competition years ago.
I was there. It's a God, I keep thinking.
I want to say Mamba, but it was the one before that, I'm pretty sure.
I can't remember the name, but it starts with D.
Yeah, it'll come back to us. Death Adder.
That's it.
That's the ticket. Alright, with that memory burp behind us, I think we'll launch into tonight's talking points. We're going to discuss a couple of things to do with gaming again, with a bit of a tangential interest into tech in general these days. Something that's a huge deal at the moment with the closure of Season 4 of Game of Thrones is piracy, especially here in Australia. It's a big thing, and it's on the agenda at the moment. For those of you outside Australia that don't know, we have a new Attorney General who's very interested in clamping down on piracy. And this is a big deal because Australia sucks when it comes to getting content. I'll ask you this, Scuzzy, do you watch Game of Thrones?
I do.
And without leading too much, how did you acquire it?
Oh, probably not the way I should have. But
yeah, I'd have to say I'm the same there.
It's one of those sort of big questions. I mean, there's besides the issues with exclusivity deals with the likes of Foxtel and things like that, if you don't want to pour money into Rupert Murdoch's empire, what other options do you have? I mean, recently you can now get the episodes in Google Play, but one of the biggest issues or drivers behind why Australians, I guess, drive to pirating the likes of their TV episodes, one's the quantity of ads which are on commercial television. The second thing I think the biggest driver is because we tend to get things behind our US brethren, spoilers and on the internet and the amount of talk there is on social media around these high profile shows, you just want to be able to partake in a lot of that without getting, especially the cliffhangers which are in Game of Thrones, those spoiled for you, is a big thing. I think it's a massive driver.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I know, especially in my workplace, if you haven't watched it by the Tuesday morning, we get it on Monday here in Australia. If you haven't watched it by then, you need to either call in sick to work or wear your headphones all day, because you are going to hear who died last night and what happened. And as you said, the only option we have is to fork out for Murdoch's empire, rabble, rabble, or just simply wait. And I know in the instances of people like you and me, we do buy the DVDs and the Blu-rays when they come out because we want to support this content, but they just make it such a bitch to get it in a timely manner.
Yeah, it's not only that, but a lot of the other issues, even if you take the Foxtel example, you can't just buy the programs that you want. It comes bundled with all these other things like Housewives of Melbourne and all this other drool.
Tell me that's not actually a show.
Oh, Google it, mate. It's scary. But
oh my dear Lord.
There's all sorts of programs you get bundled in with it, and you can't just choose that one channel. Say if you just wanted HBO or whatever, it's horrendous, and the amount of money you end up paying for it by comparison to, over in the US being able to stream stuff online or whatever is significantly cheaper. That being said, if I was Rupert Murdoch, I'd be wrapping as much stuff in exclusivity agreements as possible. So I understand why it's occurred, but that's unfortunately the way the cookie crumbles in Australia with the monopoly that is in place. So
yeah, you're right there. And I mean, part of the blame lies with HBO as well. They have to know that by signing this exclusivity deal, even with the mountains of money I'm sure they're getting, that they're screwing over a part of their user base just a touch, because they have to know that a majority of Australians are trying to get this show, and a lot of them aren't getting it the way they really should be. And the interesting thing around that is we just looked it up before we come on the show, and Google Play is now offering it after the entire season has ended for a fairly reasonable price of about $30, I think it was. So it's not unreasonable in terms of pricing to get it after the fact in an on-demand fashion.
Yeah, look, price I don't think is the concern in Australia. It's about access, and in a medium that's appropriate to how you want to consume the media as well.
Yeah, well, that's true. I mean, not everyone wants to get Foxtel Play or, have to dust off the old DVD player to, pull out the DVDs and watch them again. A lot of people I certainly know, and I know nonLethal's the same, have, either their laptop or a media center PC where they just sit down with, the ripped file off their DVD or from the Yarra Bay and just want to watch it on their laptop or just on a media center PC or something like that.
Yeah, well, I've actually put a fair bit of content, like if there's movies and stuff I'm trying to catch up on or whatnot, I'll actually put it on my Vita to watch on a plane so that I'm not chewing up the battery life of my phone or tablet when I'm in transit for work, just trying to kill some time.
Yeah, that's true. And I think the worst thing about that is in Australia, that's technically supposed to be illegal. You can't do a media shift of content you've licensed or own.
Yeah, copyright law in Australia is fairly antiquated. When I say that, a lot of the laws have got technology-specific terminology in them. So as a result, they're actually bound to the medium which the law is wrapped around. It's it's quite convoluted and needs to be updated.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's the annoying thing is they're clamping down now on pirates, which I can respect. They don't want people out there just outright bold-facedly stealing content when it's something that can be stopped. But I think it needs to be done in tandem with an updating of these laws so consumers can do media shifts. They can get access to content on time and not necessarily be bound into value-add services that they don't particularly want or don't want to pay for. I think a Foxtel subscription just to get that show with all the bundled stuff costs you upwards of about $10 or $12 an episode.
Yeah, it's not only that, but take my personal example. You've seen how large my DVD collection is. There's a lot of movies which I want to watch when I'm about, and I'll download them as opposed to actually convert the DVD or Blu-ray copies that I have, because it's actually quicker to download them than to actually thread them through a media converter.
You can't say that. That means we don't need the NBN. That's a filthy lie.
I'm fortunate enough that where I live, I'm within stone's throw of an exchange, so my internet service isn't half bad, but I'm one of the few, I guess.
The rest of us are downloading on a 56k, you son of a bitch. But I won't digress into the NBN too much. But I think we sort of hit the nail on the head there. It can just really be an access issue. And just not to dilute this even more, I know the Lego movie, which came out now a few months ago, or a year ago for those in America, and there was a huge contention over that because it came out several months in America earlier than it did in Australia, which is just absurd.
A lot of that would have to be tied into some sort of exclusivity deal and thing like that as well.
Well, it seems likely. I can't imagine they had to spend 3 months, localizing it so, the lead character goes, put another shrimp on the Barbie, mate.
Yeah.
Or something of that nature.
Well, I wouldn't have thought there'd be too much localization that would occur between the US and us anyway.
Well, the only movie I can think of that's happened in recently was Captain America 2, where he has a list at the start of the movie that changes. The text in the list changes between different countries, and even then they managed to do that within 3 days of it coming out in different countries.
Yeah, but one would assume that a minor change or something like that could actually be done prior to release, so that simultaneous release is possible.
Yeah, and that's what made it all the more absurd that the Lego movie took forever to actually come out here. And I mean, they timed it for school holidays and stuff like that, which I can sort of understand. But being an adult with no kids, I don't really care about the damn kids and their holidays. I want to go and see a Lego movie.
Yeah, it's an interesting issue. I don't understand it. Like, this day and age, given the fact that, they're not shipping rolls of film around, we're talking about digital copies of films with DRM and all of that sort of thing.
You've just hit the nail on the head, mate. That's why it takes so long to get to Australia. They have to download the film from America. So someone's just started the US torrent of the Lego movie here in Australia to get it over here. And it's taken that long to download that they couldn't release it any earlier.
Well, that, and it probably takes longer than anywhere else to go through classification here as well, but that's a story for another day.
That's true. That's something we'll likely have you back for one day, and we'll do a long story on that, because classification in Australia is another thing that's a joke, but we'll try not to keep this too Australian specific. Carrying on in the theme of piracy, it's also something that's very prevalent in games, and considering we've had a few gaming heavy episodes, it seems appropriate to bring this up yet again. But we have studios like Ubisoft and EA out there whinging that all gamers are filthy thieves and we need horrible, horrible DRM. And this only, to me, doesn't seem to be a problem for publishers on consoles, because piracy is impossible on consoles, right?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. What's your take on piracy in a gaming space?
Look, I haven't pirated, and hand on heart I can say this, a game in an incredibly long time, due to the fact that I have fairly large demands on my time, and the amount of time it takes to actually patch and crack and find something that's appropriate and not get your machine virus ridden by what you're trying to download, so on and so forth. It's just not worth my time. The amount of time I'd spend doing it, I could have worked that amount of hours and got money to buy the games anyway. So it's more so about convenience. Not only that, but games nowadays, if you can't play them online, you lose so much. Like you mentioned, Ubisoft and EA and things like that. Like the latest release game from EA, Titanfall, without being able to play that online, it'd be pretty dull, I would have thought.
Yeah, well, I have to admit I haven't looked around, but I imagine the cracked version of that must be somewhat dull, sitting in a private server all on your own.
Yeah, but not only that, like even like the Call of Duty games and stuff like that. I don't think I've played the single player campaign of a Call of Duty game since Call of Duty United Offensive, the original. And
That just makes you a terrible person. I'm exactly the opposite. I've only played the single player campaigns, mostly because I refuse to give them $80 for a goddamn Call of Duty clone, which is just a clone of the game from the previous year.
yeah, I mean, I haven't bought a COD title since Modern Warfare 3, but it's the case in point, I guess, is around, multiplayer is such a big part of, gaming nowadays that the single player isn't, at least on PC, I think is less of an issue.
Yeah, that's a good point, and I think Steam's had a fairly large role to play in that, and now Origin to a greater extent. I know Origin is doing a free games deal where they'll pitch a free game your way every couple of months just to sort of help boost the platform, and they're now starting to have the sales as well that Steam has had for a long time that has robbed us all blind.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing, like the comparison between sort of console and PC around the fact that I think what's driving down the amount of piracy within the console space is the fact that there's actually a pre-owned game market.
Yeah, definitely. I know I personally don't usually go for pre-owned games because I'm a little bit OCD like that. I go out and drop the $110 to buy a game brand new, but I definitely always see the sales where you can pick up, two or three pre-owned games for $40 or even $20 these days if they're a little bit older or didn't sell particularly well or just weren't somebody's cup of tea and they've just gone back and dumped it in the store for $10 off a different game.
Yeah, look, I think over my entire gaming career, quote unquote, looking at my shelf behind me at the moment, I've got about 60 Xbox 360 games. Probably well over half of those are pre-owned. I don't think I've ever traded one in. I've traded in two games for the Vita, but that'd be about it because I tend to collect and hang on to the games because I like going back and playing them or playing co-op with friends or something similar. But I don't see the point in, I guess, shelling out for a new game if you can get a pre-owned copy at half the price. If there's $5 or $10 difference, I'll buy the new title, but otherwise I tend to buy pre-owned nowadays. And you can buy disc warranties and stuff like that for an extra couple of dollars, so that if for whatever reason the copy gets scratched, you can take it back and get it replaced or polished or whatever. Seems to fit the bill for the type of gaming that I do.
Yeah, and I think a lot of other people would be the same. I know personally I try to be a collector. I'm a bit the same as you, which is why I sometimes go for the collector's editions or get the brand new and then sort of let it sit in the shelf. And I've only recently moved away from this in the PC space just because of things like Steam sales where I can go out and buy a game brand new for $60 or I can get it on sale on Steam for $3. And it's like, it's just not worth having on my shelf for the extra $57 it's going to cost me to have the box to go with the CD.
Yeah, but having that boxed copy used to be something, something extra. Like you used to get, the extra fluff, whether it was some sort of game art or a bound manual or, like I'm looking at my shelf at the moment, I've got the collector's edition of sort of Baldur's Gate 2, which come with a cloth map, a whole heap of different artwork, numbered artwork that you can get framed and things like that. Nowadays, it's literally just a disc and a CD key, which chances are you're redeeming through Steam anyway. The amount of
or in the case of Diablo, it installs the installer off the disc, and then you've still got to do the 20 gig download regardless.
Yeah, I mean, even I can't remember what the last game I actually bought a box copy for was. It was only probably a couple of months ago, but I actually used Steam on my phone to redeem the code whilst I was standing in the store, so it was downloaded and ready to play by the time I actually got home. It's I don't see the value in a boxed game anymore. If it's a collector's edition, you get something nice, something collectible to stick on the shelf, and if it's something you actually want, then yeah, sure, great. But otherwise, I just don't see the value in it.
Well, it's like you said, there is no value anymore. It used to be you'd get the manuals that's got a lot of the backstory, and I know in some of the much, much older games, that was all the story you got was what was in the manual. There wasn't very much exposition in the game whatsoever. So it was crucial back then to have the box copy instead of the burnt disc from your friend's uncle or however you got it back then. So it was definitely something worth having back then. But as you said, now it's just a disc and sometimes a DLC code that's in the box or something like that, and it just seems so pointless. I know for me, the last box copy I got of a game was Titanfall. I paid about $68 for it. I got home, redeemed the key, and it took me to the store page in Origin. It's like, you can have the game plus the season pass for $65. I'm just like, son of a bitch. I literally got screwed buying a retail copy on Origin of all platforms.
Yeah, it's the only exception, I guess, to everything I've just said that I personally do is I prefer to get the Vita games on card than DLC, so that I'm not chewing up the what's priced at a premium, the space on my memory card.
Yeah, well, I'm sure we could go into Sony's proprietary memory cards and how that's a crock of bollocks. But anyway, we'll step past that. We should probably address the elephant in the room as we're going along here, talking about things like Steam and Origin. Steam is having a huge summer sale, as they do every year, again at the moment. And I got to tell you, mate, I'm having the worst kind of crisis. I'm one of these horrible middle-class people that I clearly have too much disposable income, and over the last few years' worth of sales, I've bought what I officially class as too many games. So it's now gotten to the point where I've looked at the Steam summer sale today, this very day, and wanted to go in and buy a couple of games. I've clicked on 2 games that I swear to God I've never heard of before, and somehow I own them.
Yeah, well, you buy a lot of stuff through Humble Bundles and things like that as well.
Well, that's true, but I haven't even paid enough attention to know what I've been redeeming out of those. I buy a Humble Bundle for a single game and then just redeem the other 5 because they're there, and now I have this collection of 300 plus games that I didn't know I owned. A friend of mine had Raven, Legacy of a Master Thief, and I went into I remember watching a trailer and I'm like, oh, I should buy this game, it's probably on sale. I go in, it's like, you've owned this since February. It's like, oh, I've been wanting to play this for months and I didn't even realise I owned it.
Yeah, I've got a massive backlog of stuff that I haven't played as well, and a lot of that's just got to do with, different bundles or whatever that you buy because they're, cheaper or something that's come up on sale or something similar. And I mean, as, life gets busier and busier, I know in my case, now got a 2-year-old daughter, and, I like spending a lot of time with the family and things like that, so I spend a lot less time playing than back when you and I used to play Call of Duty professionally.
That's right, back in the days where we've got kids telling us, oh, we creamed you.
So, back in those days, we'd put in 30 to 40 hours a week minimum. Now I'd probably play somewhere between 4 to 8 on average. Half of that would be on the Vita, and every now and again I'll put in a stint on the PC. But it's gotten to a stage now where I won't buy a new game unless I've played the other one that I already own, which is in the series. Case in point, Assassin's Creed. I haven't bought Black Flag yet because I still haven't played through 3.
Oh, but it has all the pirates, man. What's the matter with you?
Yeah, I know. It's just one of those things which I've now started to do to sort of curve myself from buying all these titles and then just never getting around to actually playing them.
Do you think it's become more of a thing, though, and I'm going to sound older than I am saying this, where back in the old days, 6 years ago or something like that, when we played Call of Duty professionally, I dropped $60 on that game, and I played the ever-loving Christ out of it. And I'm not sure if it was directly tied to the fact that I actually had to drop $60 whole on a game like that and wanted to get my money's worth, whereas now, if I bought something for less than what it cost me to buy a cup of coffee, I don't really care if I never even see it again.
Yeah. Well, here you go. Here's some interesting stats that Steam released back in April this year. So, out of all the games which are purchased on Steam, just under 78% actually play it. Only 42% of players that play a game get to halfway through. Only just under 30% finish it. But just over 22% of games which are purchased, which equates to 1 in 5, never get played. Out of all the games which are sold on Steam, 1 in 5.
That's phenomenal. And I would be contributing phenomenally to that statistic. I looked at my own stats just the other day when the summer sale began, and out of the 314 games I think I own, I have played literally 9, which is just embarrassing.
You're what we refer to as a statistical outlier.
and well, that's right. And I mean, surely contributing to that, 1 in 5 is just phenomenal, especially when, only a few years ago, you would buy a game and you'd spend anywhere between $40 and $100 on it. And you would play it because bugger dropping $40 to $100 on another game before you've played this one damn near to death. And I did that with Assassin's Creed 2. I spent about $80 on that or something like that. And I got every goddamn collectible. I just played it until I couldn't play it anymore. And then, got a better job and could afford to buy games by the half dozen at a time. And it just flew through, all the other ones in the Ezio series. And then 3, which I don't remember because it was just so terrible.
Don't tell me that, because I'm hoping to sit down and finish that before Christmas so I can get Black Flag before the new one comes out.
Spoiler alert, it's crap. Just clock it and move on.
Yeah, fair enough. Point taken.
But I also did that with Black Flag, and Black Flag was a good game, but I didn't have the time. I had so many other games to play, and I know bloody Ubisoft are going to bring out one every year now because Infinite Money Machine. And I just absolutely flew through the campaign and finished it as quick as I could in about 3 days worth of, 3 sit-downs to actually get through it. And then I'm just like, I'm done with this game. I can either go back and play this game for all non-campaign, non-story critical stuff, or I could move on and play something like Watch Dogs, which I haven't started yet, or Red Dead Redemption, which I haven't even taken out of the plastic casing yet.
Yeah, that's sacrilegious. Red Dead was one of the best games I reckon I've ever played on the console. I love that.
I keep hearing this, and yet when I sit down to play it, it's like I should still beat Uncharted. I should still play one of my poor neglected Steam games.
Dude, it's Grand Theft Auto on horses in the Wild Wild West. What more do you need?
Yeah, well, see, I got close to playing it one time, and then Grand Theft Auto 5 came out, and then that was Grand Theft Auto, but quote-unquote high def.
Yeah, I must admit I haven't played GTA since 3. I've sort of steered away and played other games instead. Probably because
that's what makes you the worst person ever.
Yeah, possibly, but my taste in games is somewhat an acquired taste, I guess.
This is true. I have a friend similar to you, and we've spent some time trying to figure out what his genre is, and we've discovered that his thing is that he doesn't have a thing. And I think you're another one of those people where you play the randomest assortment of games, and there is just no interlocking, overriding genre or anything of that nature.
Yeah, look, I think I'm going more so back to where I started, which is around RTSs. I seem to be enjoying playing those a lot more.
Jesus.
Yeah, I know.
Sorry, I've just had flashbacks of playing Command & Conquer 3 back in the day with you as well, when we were still doing a little bit of professional gaming. And your first experience online playing an RTS, just out there in the big wide world, as I'm sure most people would have experienced in StarCraft, just getting your ass handed to you by what I will racistly call Koreans.
Yeah, well, I'm actually going to a LAN party for the first time in about a year this weekend, where I'm hoping to rekindle a bit of that, so it'll be good fun. So CNC3 is on the list of games they're going to play, so I'm looking forward to getting stuck in.
Yeah, CNC is definitely one of the LAN favourites that I know certainly comes out. It has been forever since I've been to a LAN gaming event, though. Everything now seems to have sort of gone towards online gaming, really.
Yeah, trying to find games which are LAN capable that don't require an internet connection is a bit of a challenge.
Yeah, well, it takes us back to what we were saying before, bloody DRM and everything has to connect to online, and most LAN gaming events that I've been to specifically don't have an internet connection because everyone could be sitting there torrenting or harassing other people, or just generally not really playing LAN games with the people there. They're online playing with others.
Well, that was the big thing back when I used to run LAN parties. The thing that differentiated us to some of the other organisations that were running was we got sponsorship to actually have an internet connection so that people could update their games and make sure they had the latest patches. There's nothing worse than getting to a LAN and finding the version of the game's out of date and it won't actually LAN up with the other people you've got it, and so on.
Yeah, that definitely makes a difference, especially with Steam nowadays. If people aren't just trading around cracked copies of games and things like that, you've got to make sure you've got to have all the latest patches on Steam, or even if you don't have the game downloaded, you've got to actually grab a copy or get someone else to back up theirs and trade media around. It can be a lot of hassle, and having an internet connection certainly make a big difference, I would have thought.
Yeah, but not only that, but the people that forget to set Steam to offline mode before they actually go to a LAN as well.
That's true. That's such a terrible function. They still haven't got it right after nearly a decade of it being around.
The amount of times I've been to LANs where I've had to tether my phone via a USB cable to someone's machine just to get their Steam into offline mode so we can play a game.
God, no wonder people stay at home and play online in their underwear nowadays.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the one thing that I sort of have always liked about LANs is the social aspect, the fact it gets people, quote-unquote, out in the sunlight actually socialising. But, I mean, that's always the thing I've liked about online gaming is the social aspect as opposed to anything else. I mean, otherwise you may as well be, playing against AI.
Yeah, well, we discussed that in last week's episode, how gaming culture, unfortunately, has moved a little bit away from couch gaming where you've actually got 2 or 3 friends over, or you're at a big LAN gaming event and you're all actually interacting with each other while you're playing, instead of, jumping into World of Warcraft with, 8 million other players and then deciding to go questing on your own because you can't be bothered dealing with other people.
I mean, MMOs I've never really gotten into for that exact reason, is that whole having to be online at a certain time and just, having those time constraints. But not only that, but I've always just liked the social aspect and, having a few laughs while you're playing and things like that, which I think a lot of that's been lost. And that's one of the reasons I stopped playing a lot of the COD franchises. It just become a heap of teenagers screaming at each other over microphones, and it just does my head in.
Yeah, well, that brings me back to another point I wanted to raise before we wrap up this week's show, is back to the Steam Summer Sale. They've created some sort of meta game this time around for the sale, and I think it's to sucker people into spending even more money on the sales, where now you get assigned to a team when you get involved in the sale, if you choose to at all, and they're giving away quite a lot of prizes to the winning team for a particular day. And what do you make of it, Scuzz? I mean, it was strange when it came up. I know I had to do a bit of reading on it just to find out what the hell Gabe Newell was up to this time, that cunning bastard, to see how they're prying us our money. What's your take on it?
Look, I haven't read too much into it. I shouldn't say I haven't read too much into it. I was quite intrigued as to what the hell this thing was. And once I actually read into it, it's just a marketing stunt, more so than anything else, as it's just a way of, gamers getting achievements and things like that, which is something I've never really been into.
Yeah, I'm ashamed to admit that me and a friend of mine are having a little bit of a duel over our Steam level, which is a completely pointless badge of EPing, since it seems to give you no tangible benefit whatsoever that I've come across. And we've been battling it out, slowly jumping or leapfrogging each other up in levels. And I think we're currently both sitting at around 35, and it pains me to admit how much money I must have spent on those goddamn trading cards at this point in time. And as much as I hate those goddamn cards, it seems to be such an effective way to pry people away from their money.
Yeah, look, I've never really understood it. Every single one of those Steam items that I've been able to sell has been sold.
You wise man.
I just don't
Probably to suckers like me pouring their wallet into pointless virtual objects.
Yeah, look, possibly, but it's, for me, I guess the whole point of it, if it was like a loyalty program, now I compare like all the levels and stuff which are within Steam to sort of what I get with my EB card when I go to EB, in as much as that the amount of stuff that you actually buy that you put on your card gains your levels, and besides whether or not you get invites to EB World and all that other side of it, you know, if going to those sort of events floats your boat, at least you get a percentage bonus with games you actually trade in eventually. You know, if you got some sort of discount or a free game a year or whatever, at least it would attribute to, you know, something that was tangible. Whereas, you know, to have, you know, an extra badge on a profile or something like that, I just don't understand.
Yeah, they've given it a go where they try to give you discount vouchers for certain games, but you're always at the mercy of a random number generator. It's always, you know, this time around you get this random emote icon that I'll never use because I never use Steam Chat, and the next time around you'll get 90% off an indie game which looks kind of interesting and I'll add to my collection of 300 plus games I'll never play. And those sorts of things are interesting, but I think there's no clear goal to work towards. You're just completely at the mercy of whatever random discount it throws at you, this roll of the dice.
Yeah, it's like I said, I just don't get it. It's not compelling me any more than what their current specials are to actually spend anything. Like, it's not like I'm sitting there and going, geez, if our team got an extra couple of points, I might actually get something out of it. So yeah, I'll spend that extra $4 on this game that I may or may not eventually get around to playing. I'm just not getting the compulsion from it this time around. And even previously, like all the extra tags and bonus items and the winter sale crates you used to get for item drops in Team Fortress 2 and all of that stuff, I just I never really saw value in it. It definitely didn't factor into my decision making process on whether or not I purchased something or didn't.
Yeah, I definitely recommend people get involved in it if they're going to be buying items from the summer sale anyway, purely because if you are a member of the winning team, which so far through the sale appears to be not particularly random, they are awarding 30 people who have contributed points to their team 3 games from their wish list, which I thought was a fairly impressive reward. But the statistics, and I know you and I were discussing this before the show, don't really lend in your favour. They're giving them out to the 30, I presume random 30 contributors instead of the top 30 from each team. So your chance among a pool of around 6 million players is incredibly low of actually benefiting from that. And I think you're right in the sense that it's just not going to tip people over the edge. If I was going to spend that $4 on a game, then I was probably going to spend it anyway, regardless of whether my team gets 5 points or not.
Alright, so I've had a look at the stats, and according to most of the research which is out there online, there's about 75 million active players on Steam. So they're divided into 5 teams, and of those winning teams, 30 players will actually get something from it, you know, a free game off their wish list, which means you're one in effectively 500,000 chance daily of getting something out of it.
That's, yeah, just phenomenally low, and just seems a little bit pointless in the grand scheme of things if that's the only reason you're pouring money into Steam other than cheap games.
Yeah, look, for me, like I said before, it's not a reason to be spending money, but I'll partake in it. As far as if I'm going to, you know, buy something and as a result, you know, I'll get a chance at getting something else for free or assist someone else in getting something for free. At least someone's getting a bonus out of me, you know, buying a game that I'm intending to actually buy and play anyway.
True. I think if you treat it more as a passive thing, it definitely has some value to it, but it's not something you really actively want to throw yourself into.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing is to just see, you know, as far as I haven't delved into, you know, how many points equate to dollars and cards getting redeemed and all of those sort of things. But it's some of the stats which are getting thrown up daily. There's certainly a massive amount of activity going on out there. So
definitely, there's just too many people like me pouring their money into pointless virtual currency. But I think at that point, that's where we might wrap up today's show. We've gone a little bit over time this week. I hope all our listeners out there don't mind very much. As usual, if you've enjoyed the show, subscribe on iTunes and follow us on all that social media shenanigan that nonLethal looks after. We look forward to having him back in a couple of weeks. It's been great having you on the show, Scuzz. Thanks for coming on.
No worries. Pleasure. Anytime.
You are our honorary first guest nerd, and we'd be honoured to have you back next week, since nonLethal is still too much of a jerk to return for a little while longer yet.
No worries. Whatever I can do to help. It's always good to have a chat about something, you know, games and tech related, so very happy to.
That's right. We'll get stuck into a few more tech topics out there for everyone who's hanging on to it. But until then, I've been Tolly.
And I'm Scuzz.
Thanks for listening.